Breaking the Code, Times and Seasons, Part 8, Synchronisms and Chronology of 457 BC versus Study. Introduction to Part 8, following Part 2 and 7 of this research on synchronisms and chronology of the Bible. Part 8 is offering the list of synchronisms found in Part 2 and which we have used as well in Part 7 with their biblical dates based on the lunisolar barley harvest calendar. The previous studies in this series prove the value of synchronism and chronology. Number 1, biblical chronology is one of the perfect methods, as we saw that the Creator chose to plant His calendar in the sacred word. The other method is the sanctuary. Number 2, His calendar was restored in the 1800 era with the explanation of the longest time prophecy of Daniel chapter 8 verse 14, the 2300 days found in Daniel 9 verses 24 to 27. Number 3, its starting date is based on Daniel chapter 9 verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Number 4, this commandment or decree is found in Ezra chapter 7 verse 8, and it corresponds to 457 BC, as we saw, and its terminal point of October 22nd, 1844, as the appointed time of the Day of Atonement found in Leviticus 23. Number 5, the biblical calendar used to ascertain October 22nd, 1844 is the same calendar which must be used to do the reckoning of the weekly 7-day Sabbath. Synchronism and Chronology, Table 5. The synchronisms and chronology demonstrated, and actually which we use in Table 1 to 4, will be used to make up Table 5 by including the list of the synchronisms obtained from Ezekiel. Where mentioned, the day, month, and year will be submitted in biblical calendar reckoning as it has been done for the 14 Ezekiel synchronisms in Table 2, Part 2, with the hope that the reader will take time to peruse each synchronism and compare them, as we have done, with Table 4, Part 7, to prove to themselves their accuracy. The King James Version of the Bible is used again for this exercise. Please pray before reading His Word as you are entering holy ground. Table 5 are the biblical synchronisms and chronology based on the biblical calendar, proving 457 BC, and these have been studied with Table 4, Part 7. Therefore, in Part 8, we will proceed with the synchronism which mention month, day, and year, and acknowledge the biblical reckoning as we did for the 14 Ezekiel synchronisms in Table 2, Part 2. Synchronism, page 56, the online pagination, and page 2, the original manuscript pagination, mention only the years of the event or synchronism from Synchronism 1 to 14. If you read them again, no month or day are mentioned in those synchronisms. Therefore, we will pass to page 57 for Synchronism 15 to 29. Page 57 of the online pagination and 3 of the original manuscript pagination, Synchronism 15 to 18 mention only the year of the event or synchronism. We will pass then to the synchronism number 19 from 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 1. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month. So here we have the 10th month and the 10th day of the month on the 5th column. If you take time to look at it, it will correspond on the 6th column to the 2nd day of the 2nd week. So we are concentrating specifically on the day. So the 10th day of the biblical week is always the 2nd day of the 2nd week. This is the same exercise as we did in part 2 with the 14 synchronism of the book of Ezekiel. Going now to synchronism 21, Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 2. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Joachim's captivity. So the 5th day of the month is always the 4th day of the first biblical week. Synchronism 22, Ezekiel 8 verse 1. And it came to pass in the 6th year of Joachim's captivity, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month. So the 5th day of the month, this is what we're paying attention to, is always the 4th day of the first biblical week of the month. The synchronism number 23, Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 1. We do realize we have already done those both in part 2 and part 7, but it's good to repeat so we are grounded. And it came to pass in the 7th year of Joachim's captivity, in the 5th month, the 10th day of the month. The 10th day of the month is always the 2nd day of the 2nd biblical week. Synchronism 24, Ezekiel 24 verse 1. And in the 9th year of Joachim's captivity, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month. The 10th day of the month, again, is always the 2nd day of the 2nd biblical week. Jeremiah chapter 39 verse 1, synchronism 25. In the 9th year of Ezekiel, king of Judah, in the 10th month. This only mentioned the month. We don't have a day to deal with here. Then we will pass to 26. Synchronism of Ezekiel 29 verse 1. In the 10th year of Joachim's captivity, in the 10th month, in the 12th day of the month. The 12th day of the month is always the 4th day of the 2nd biblical week. We will bypass synchronism 27 and go to synchronism 29. Ezekiel chapter 30 verse 20. And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the 1st month, in the 7th day of the month. The 7th day of the month is always the 6th day of the first week, which would have been the month of Abib, which is the beginning of the year. And this is how we will proceed for all of the other synchronism in the next pages. Synchronism 30, Ezekiel 31 verse 1. And it came to pass in the 11th year of Joachim's captivity, in the 3rd month and the 1st day of the month. The 1st day of the month, that would have been the new moon of the biblical month. Synchronism 31, Ezekiel 26 verse 1. And it came to pass in the 11th year of Joachim's captivity, in the 1st day of the month, again mentioning the new moon for the biblical month. As we go now to synchronism 32, Jeremiah chapter 39 verse 2. And in the 11th year of Zedekiah, in the 4th month, the 9th day of the month. The 9th day of the month is the 1st day of the 2nd biblical week. And this is how we are to do the reckoning. Synchronism 34, Ezekiel 33 verse 21. And it came to pass in the 12th year of our captivity, that is Jehoiakim's captivity, in the 10th month, in the 5th day of the month. The 5th day of the month is always the 4th day of the first biblical week. Synchronism 35, Jeremiah chapter 52 verse 12. Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month. The 10th day of the month is the 2nd day of the 2nd biblical week. Synchronism 36, Ezekiel 32 verse 1. And it came to pass in the 12th year of Jehoiakim captivity, in the 12th month, in the 1st day of the month. The 1st day of the month is always new moon. And this is a biblical month, of course. Synchronism 37, Ezekiel chapter 32 verse 17. And it came to pass in the 12th year of Jehoiakim captivity, in the 15th day of the month. The 15th day of the month is always a 7-day Sabbath, and this would be of the 2nd biblical week. As we go now to Synchronism 38, 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 8, and in the 5th month on the 7th day of the month. The 7th day of the month is the 6th day of the first biblical week. We will bypass a few of those synchronism as we go to Synchronism 41, Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1. In the 25th year of our captivity, which is Jehoiakim captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month. So the 10th day of the month would have been the 2nd day of the 2nd biblical week. And of course, the first month or the beginning of the month, this would have been here, the beginning of the year, that would have been the month of Abib. Synchronism 42, Ezekiel chapter 29 verse 17. And it came to pass in the 7th and 20th year of Jehoiakim captivity, in the 1st month, in the 1st day of the month. This is celebrating the new moon, but also the new year with the month of Abib. So we are being revealed here wonderful truth regarding the biblical calendar simply because of these synchronisms. And of course the chronology is found in column number 2 with the occurring year of those synchronisms. Synchronism 43, Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 1. Now it came to pass in the 30th year of Jehoiakim captivity, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month. The 5th day of the month is the 4th day of the first biblical week. Synchronism 44, Jeremiah chapter 52 verse 31. And it came to pass in the 7th and 30th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, in the 25th day of the month. The 25th day in the Hebrew calendar is always the 3rd day of the 4th biblical week. Synchronism 45, 2 Kings 25 verse 27. And it came to pass in the 7th and 30th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month. The 27th day of the month, and this was according to the Babylon calendar compared to the previous one, which was the Hebrew calendar, but nevertheless it still established itself against the biblical calendar as the 5th day of the 4th biblical week. We're going to scroll down now to Synchronism 55, in the 2nd year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, the 1st day of the month, and of course the 1st day of the month is the new moon. Synchronism 56, Haggai chapter 1 verse 15. In the 24th day of the 6th month, in the 2nd year of Darius the king. We have the 24th day here, which is the 2nd day of the 4th biblical week. Synchronism 57, Haggai chapter 2 verse 1, in the 7th month and in the 120th day. The 21 would have been the 6th day of the 3rd week. What's so particular about the 7th month is it's in the month of the Feast of Tabernacle. And this just happened to be the 21st of the 7th month, so it's right into the week of the Feast of Tabernacle itself. Synchronism 58, Haggai chapter 2 verse 10, in the 24th day of the 9th month, the 24th day of the month is the 2nd day of the 4th biblical week. Going to now Synchronism 60, upon the 24th day of the 11th month, the 24th of the month is the 2nd day of the 4th biblical week. As we scroll now down to Synchronism 65, in the 1st month, that is the month Nisan, and it also mentioned the 12th month, that is the month Adar. Those are the Babylonian name. The biblical name would be either the month of Abib for the 1st month or simply the 1st month and the 12 months, which would be the last month of the common year. We mentioned this synchronism, although there is no day, just simply to point to the month, the 1st month of the year and the last month of the year. Synchronism 66, Esther chapter 3 verse 12. Then were the king's scribe called on the 13th day of the 1st month. The 13th day is the 5th day of the 2nd week, and again the 1st month would have been the beginning of the year in the month of Abib. And again we can see a lot of mention of the biblical calendar when we now know how to reckon the biblical calendar through the synchronism and the beautiful chronology of the Bible. Synchronism 67, Esther chapter 3 verse 13. The end of the quote reads, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month. The 13th day is the 5th day of the 2nd biblical week. Synchronism 69, Esther chapter 8 verses 9 to 12. In the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof, there is also another mention of a date in that verse. We go further. Upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. So according to the Babylonian, it was Sivan and Adar, but according to the Bible, which is usually used as a numerical number, the 23rd day of the biblical week would be, the 23rd day would be the 1st day of the 4th week. And we looked at the 13th day, which is the 5th day of the 2nd biblical week. Synchronism 70, Esther chapter 9 verse 1. Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same. Again, the 13th day is the 5th day of the 2nd biblical week. Going now to Synchronism 71, Esther chapter 9 verse 17. On the 13th day of the month Adar and on the 14th day, we have here the 13 and the 14, and this would correspond to the 14th day. We will look at first the 13th day, which would be the 5th day of the 2nd week, and the 14th day would be the 6th day of the 2nd biblical week, of course. Synchronism 72, Esther chapter 9 verse 18, on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day, the same day they rested. So we have here 3 dates, the 13, 14, and 15 of the 12th month. The 13 again is the 5th day of the 2nd week, 14, 6th day of the 2nd week, and the 15 is the 7th day of the 2nd week, which would be a Sabbath. So we can see in Esther there are many synchronism and chronology that we can learn the biblical week from. It's a very good exercise. As we go now to Synchronism 74, Ezra chapter 7 verse 8, the 5th month, which was the 7th year of the king. We have here, again, it's a repetition, but we know it's the first day of the month when that occurs, so it would be a new moon. Synchronism 75, Ezra chapter 7 verse 9, the first day of the first month. This is when he went up to Jerusalem. This is why the 74 synchronism correspond to the 75th one. So he went the first day in the first month and the first day in the 5th month. Take note of this. So it's 2 different months. So we have 2 dates again, which is corresponding to the first day of the month, which is a new moon for the first month, and on the new year as well. And so when we go now to the 5th month, on the first day of the month, that's a new moon. So again, we have beautiful dates here that we can relate to the biblical calendar, where the new moon, the new year, the month of Abib is mentioned here, and another new moon on the 5th month. So which, if people do not know their biblical calendar, they would be missing those wonderful synchronism and chronology of the Bible. And this is the end of the 77 now altogether of the synchronism and chronology that were brought together in order to do those 2 parts of this series. This is part 8, and those synchronism are the one that we have used for part 7. Conclusion to part 8. When compared carefully with table 4 of part 7, these verses line up perfectly with the years, months, and days of the synchronisms mentioned by the biblical authors. The possibility for this to have happened by chance is nil. To borrow the words of Eli Froom in 1939 when this study was made, it was he who framed the sun, earth, moon, and star, and projected them into their appointed courses, and held them there with the precision of infinity, who ordained their cycles not merely to rule the day and the night, but as an undeviating measuring lines to tell off the great prophetic periods of divine revelation, and thus to signify the crucial epochs of the ages. It was he who, through the centuries, has guided the course of human events according to his own inscrutable scheme and schedule for man's redemption, who, through his prophet Daniel, gave the master key by which to unlock the mystery of the times, that we might understand the unfolding fulfillment of his matchless plan of salvation, spanning the centuries and now nearing its great consummation. Dated from a decree that can be checked and rechecked by eclipse-marked reigns of Babylonian and Persian monarchs, this prophetic span was certified and sealed by the death of the divine Son of God in the very year marked off by the first fully dated 70-week segment of the full prophecy. Christ came as the great antitypical Lamb of God, inherently foreshadowed by the Passover lamb type, slain on the appointed month and day, designated Hebrew sacred year, to provide the vicarious atoning sacrifice imperative to man's redemption. All this was accomplished at Christ's first advent, as he appeared on scheduled time in humility to become the predicted victim of the cross. Next, we are carried along with this mighty span of allotted years through the eventful centuries of Christ's post-ascension ministry in the heavenly sanctuary onto the very year, month, and day when he actually closed the first and entered upon the second and final phase of the priestly ministry for man, God's judgment hour, shortly to precede his second advent in glory. These consecutive period and events, we affirm, have been told of to us by inherent time-marking cycles of the sun and moon, together with the concurrent records of man. There has been and can be no mistake in calculation here. And this certainty of it all was sealed by the cross in the midst of the prophetic 70th week. Such is the deeper significance of the great Second Advent movement. It is this that underlies its appearance in scheduled time in the 19th century. Such is the amazing method, provision, and providence of God, covering time and eternity and embracing heaven and earth. And such is the wondrous, infallible time message of the spheres ordained in the very beginning of human history, not only for daily utility, but for signs and seasons and infallible measurements in disclosing the all-embracing, redemptive plan of the ages. For unto 2,300 days, then shall the heavenly sanctuary be cleansed, with the end of sin's experiment at its close. Truly, there is a God in heaven, in whom we live and move and have our being, who is soon to close forever the last page of the troubled book of human history, and truly giving to mankind heaven-appointed message pertaining to this tremendous time. We are a people with a heavenly message and a divine mandate to which we must ever adhere with unswerving allegiance. This again was taken from Eli Froon, chairman of the 1939 Committee on Historical Basis, Involvements, and Validity of the October 22, 1844 position, Grace Hamadon Collection, Part 6, pages 10 to 13, excerpts. Through these synchronisms and chronology, the Creator reveals the biblical sanctuary calendar based on the lunisolar barley harvest reckoning and his monthly appointed times, and including his weekly 70th Sabbath, which he repeats to Moses in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 1 to 3. Let those who have understanding see and accept this magnificent truth revealed in 1844, 1939, and 1995, and once more at this time since 2005.